I'm really honored to have the Enphase team down here today. I think it says something about the relationship and, the fact that, we're really looking to do something big here. We're really looking to do something different. We're looking to roll out solutions that the market hasn't seen before. And personally, I'm just extraordinarily excited. And we were just discussing even, right off stage before we were coming on here that sometimes there used to be examples when it was, Puerto Rico or somewhere else. And now it's all over the country. Texas, California, Puerto Rico, all over. Our grid is experiencing real challenges, real failure, real breakdown. And it's time for a change. It is so obvious that there is a better alternative than the grid. Am I right or am I right? Give me a thumbs up if you guys agree that it's time for us to replace the grid. Who wants to be in that business? Anybody? So if you're excited about a solution that can replace the grid, I want you to stay excited. Because coming up to the stage next is Raghu Belur, the founder of Enphase, co-founder of Enphase, and the current chief product officer. A man with a vision. And as we were just talking, I said, Raghu, did you ever imagine that when you were designing this product called the microinverter, that 12 years later, there'd be 30,000 microinverters being installed every day? That an Enphase system was being installed every 45 seconds. Just imagine that, every 45 seconds. Did you ever imagine when you were building this thing that it would reach and have such extraordinary impact? And that's the power of believing in your dreams and being an innovator. And we're just absolutely excited, honored, privileged to have Raghu here with us today. Before he comes out, we're all going to watch a video about where the future's going. So take a look at your screens, and I can't wait for what you're all about to see.
Good morning. Thank you. What an amazing, amazing event. Thank you to the Powur team for inviting us. I am super excited to be here and super energized. Are you guys ready to geek out a little bit on technology? Let's go. So here we are. So we started the company back in 2006, and I'd like to narrate something about our thinking, right? If today, Thomas Edison were to walk down the streets of San Diego, and he looked up at the electrical infrastructure, he would probably recognize all elements of it. He would recognize the poles, the wires, the transformers, the GE meter that's on the side of your house. He probably worked on it. If you walked up to the distribution centers, if you walked up to, looked at the transmission lines. So when we started the company, we were thinking, wow, this industry for sure needs some disruption. So as entrepreneurs, we started thinking, okay, what is the thing? Where could we go? What can we do? And both Martin and I, the other co-founder, we had both come off of a number of startups, particularly in the telecommunications world. And there were some things we had learned coming out of that world. And the first one was distributed architectures always win in the long run. And they win for cost, performance, and arguably the most important of all, reliability reasons. So to tie that back down to solar, what would be a distributed architecture would be if you think about a central or a string inverter, meaning you aggregate all the power from your panels and you process 5,000 watt or 5,000. That would be a centralized topology. And instead of doing it that way, instead of having one big, you break that up into microinverters, right? Put one per panel. Every panel microinverter acts like independent energy producers. Your entire plant is connected in parallel, not connected up in series. Because when you connect them up in series, you know the Christmas light problem, when one light goes out, all the lights in the Christmas tree goes off, that problem goes away. And there are a number of other benefits to being completely distributed as well. By the way, I've been in technology my entire career. And there are a lot of proof points that distributed architectures always win in the long run. If you look at the transformation from mainframe computers to PCs and laptops, right? If you look at what happened from landlines to cell phones, look at intelligence in cars, look at a data center. It's not made up of big monolithic compute machines. What you find is thousands and thousands of replicable blade servers, right? Distributed architectures always win. But there's a common thread that runs through all of those examples I gave you. And that common thread is semiconductors and software. And Silicon Valley really was built on that premise. So when we said, OK, it was obvious to us that microinverters were the way to go, so we said, so why haven't others done it before? And I realized, no, there have been people who have tried it before, but they didn't work. So obviously, being very curious, I said, no, I'm going to go figure out why didn't it work. So when we went in and started looking at how microinverters had been done, back in the days, they used to be 100 watts. People had taken a 5,000 watt inverter and shrunk it down to a 100-watt inverter. And that was the big aha for us, going, yeah, that's not the right way to do it. You have to re-architect it from the bottoms up. And if you take a page out of history, follow the same playbook, digitize it, build your own custom chip, build your own custom silicon, and put a lot of software around it. So re-architect the microinverter from the ground up. Don't start with taking a big box and shrinking it. We also took it one step further. What we said was, it's not just going to be a piece of widget, not a piece of hardware. It's going to be an integral part of an entire system. So what does that mean? It means that it's a digital topology built around silicon, built around software. The software defines what it does and how it operates. We embed full bidirectional communication into it so the device can talk to our system and the system can talk to those devices. So full bidirectional communications, a gateway, and a big data cloud service that can provide an extremely rich experience to the homeowner. You know, at the time when we were doing all of those things, we were thinking, wow, that's cool, right? But history was going to tell us something different. And that was what, when I look back in hindsight, some of those decisions that we made were amazingly right. And for that, I just think that luck played a major role. So coming back to distributed architectures, it means what you do is push more and more intelligence deeper and deeper into the network. So these endpoints, in our case, the microinverter, makes a lot of decisions autonomously. There's extremely intelligent devices. They all communicate. They're all hyper-networked, not just per home. So you may have 20 microinverters per home because you got 20 panels. But homes are also networked and hyper-connected with each other. Right? So what was cool to begin with, a full microinverter system built around hardware and software, we followed something very similar to what Apple had done with the iPhone. Right? If you look at your iPhone, it's actually an extremely sophisticated piece of hardware. It's got its own silicon. Apple makes its own chip. But where does the magic happen? The magic happens in the software that runs that device. It's a fully adaptable piece of hardware. What that means is that at any given point in time, you press on it, it's a phone. It can turn into a music device. It can turn into a web browser. We had similar notions about turning that microinverter into something that's completely software defined, gives it incredible amount of power and capability. So let's think about what are some of the advantages of doing that. Come to 2014, as solar penetration continued to increase, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing, the utilities start to realize, hang on, there's all this intelligence, and it's not just them thinking, we were pushing for it as well, saying there's all this intelligence sitting so deep in the network, how can that intelligence help the utilities actually make the grid more resilient? So there was a transformation that took place where big box inverters, which were dumb and were simply barnacles on the grid, now with microinverters and the full microinverter systems, can we take these devices and integrate them into the operation of the grid and provide resiliency? So you saw that was the first transformation of dumb inverters to very smart inverters and very intelligent inverters. But that is actually a precursor to thinking about the future. What I mean by that is the following. When people go out there and buy a solar system, what are they buying? They're actually buying a financial instrument. It's like a bond that they are purchasing. And that bond has to pay annuities every month for the next 20, 25 years. Now, think about the environment that this is going into, right? The environment's changing quite rapidly, right? The grid is changing, loads are changing, tariffs are changing, regulations are changing, weather is changing. It's unrealistic to think that you're going to go install something and it won't have to change its behavior over time. That's what I mean by the approach of taking a piece of very sophisticated hardware and making magic happen with software. Because one of the things that you can do with software is you can adapt the behavior of the device over time, right? Especially if that device is an integral part of a system which includes communication and software. Cannot tell you how many times we have been in situations where we have seen that the operating environment has changed and we have had to push software remotely and change the behavior of the device. So that construct of a software-defined device with amazing communications and software is paying dividends even today. So the transformation from dumb inverters to very intelligent inverters, rich customer experience, that thinking that we started with back in 2006 is continuing to be applicable even today. So let's go by the numbers, right? Let's look at what we have accomplished thus far, right? For the first year, we did about 15,000 micros. I think that's what we shipped. Today, we have shipped 32 million microinverters to date. We are installed in about 1.3, 1.4 million homes worldwide, right? We have over 300 patents. We have 8 generations of these devices that we have built. We are absolutely, all of these worldwide and all of these devices send data to us. We collect terabytes of data from our devices. We have great in-depth knowledge about what's going on. We take that information, take that data, convert it into information, and make our devices better and better and more reliable. Let me give you some more data. The very first generation of product, M175, had 540 components in it, was 94% efficient, and processed about 175 watts. Today, if you look at our current generation of product, it's got a little over 300 components. It's 97% efficient and processes as much as 366 watts of power. It not only does that, we added so much sophistication to it that it's no longer an inverter. This device, the exact same device, can not only flow power from the solar panel to the grid, DC to AC, but you can also reverse the power flow AC to DC, all done in software. We also made a very common device worldwide. So if you're in the US, it runs at line to line, 60 hertz, 240 volts. You take it to Europe, it's the same device in software, 230 volts, 50 hertz, line to neutral. That's the power of that architecture. So where is all this going, right? I talked a lot about solar. And we were very deliberate about not calling Enphase Solar. This was not an accident. Right from the very beginning, our ambitions were that we wanted to be the guardians of the homeowner's energy system, right? So the next evolution of solar is now adding energy storage to it, right? We know solar is an intermittent resource. I don't have solar at night. That's just the nature of things, right? However, if I couple solar and storage, I get an always-on system. I get solar during the day, I get storage at night. But we think even beyond that. We think about it as an energy platform, right? So think about it as an energy platform means not only do you think about solar plus storage, but you think about all the other resources as well that you can manage. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me talk a little bit about storage as well. So when we started thinking about storage, remember those fundamental beliefs that we had from the very beginning? I talked about everything being distributed architecture, everything being software defined, everything being part of a system. We followed that exact approach with energy storage as well. We said it's not going to be a big box chemical cells and one big giant inverter. We're going to make it very modular. It's going to be 3.3 kilowatt hours, and we're going to embed 4 microinverters in it. I mentioned to you just a few minutes ago about the microinverters being fully bidirectional. So now when you think about storage, you think about, I have the cells, I can charge the cells, or I can discharge the cells, DC to AC, just like an inverter does, but in software, I can send a command and charge the cells AC to DC. So what we ended up building is actually a storage system, not a battery. The cell pack, the battery management, the inverter, charge controller, communication software, all packaged in this 3.3 kilowatt hour module with 4 micros. You get all the benefits of a distributed architecture, starting with reliability. So now you can build pretty much any size system you want, whether that is, I have, for example, 10 kilowatt hours. Somebody has a bigger home, they may need 20 kilowatt hours. Somebody may need 16 kilowatt hours because they have different energy needs. Or you can start with 10, and a couple of years down the road, you can come back and add some more. That's the beauty of that architecture, of that storage architecture. And Dave's going to talk about some really exciting things about what we have done with energy storage. But now let me come back to that notion of being the energy guardian of the home. Think about it as a complete platform. Today, we're thinking about solar and storage, but really, the third important element of it is consumption. We want to manage people's consumption as well to deliver the best experience possible. But what's beyond that, right? We want to think about not just solar storage, your consumption, but also other resources such as fuel cells, generators, EV, and the grid. We suddenly have democratized the entire energy in your home. The grid's not the boss anymore. It's just another resource. And so we built this technology called Ensemble. It's an energy management technology. And it's built on your standard AC wiring that runs in your house, your 120 volts, 240 volt AC wiring. And just imagine all of these resources that I talked about, your solar, your storage, your loads, EV, generator, fuel cell, grid, everything simply connecting to that AC bus. And the way we thought about it was, we said, let's think about it as a marketplace of buyers and sellers, right? Solar is a seller. My washing machine is a buyer. Storage is a buyer or seller. Grid is a buyer or seller. A generator and fuel cell would both be sellers. Now what I can do is, within the home, optimize. My energy management system optimizes all of these resources and in real time figures out which is the best way to service my washing machine when it wants to run. Obviously, when I think about it, solar is the freest electron for me to use, so I always default to that, unless if it's at night, then I may choose, should I discharge my battery or should I do it from the grid? And all of that beautiful engine runs in the back. Incredible amount of sophistication, all hidden. All done by this expert system that's running in the background all the time, thinking about how do I manage this. But where is all this going? Right? What we have built from that's completely extensible. It's fully extensible means it's the same AC that's going to my neighbor's house as well. Now, I've built this microgrid within my home, a completely self-sufficient, resilient, self-reliant microgrid. My neighbor is likely to have their own microgrid. Now can I hook up these microgrids together and start transacting energy with each other? Right? Imagine my washing machine wants to run. My neighbor's solar system puts out a bid. I remember I talked about the marketplace, puts out a bid, says, hey, who's going to provide the electrons for me to run? Who's going to provide the energy for me to run? My neighbor's solar system could say, hey, my batteries are full, my homeowner's on vacation, I have energy to spare, I can service you. That's called transactive energy. Right? So you're creating these microgrids and then forming them into pools of microgrids. What are we doing? We are basically reinventing the grid from the inside out. And that's an amazingly exciting future. But all of this complexity doesn't mean that we have to make it complex for our partners such as yourself or the homeowner. As technologists, our job is to abstract away all of that complexity. Let me give you a couple of very simple examples. Right? We took that microinverter and we embedded it into the module itself. And we turned it into an AC module. Completely plug and play. There's no notion of an inverter as an example. Just install this device, you get AC out of the device. Same thing with energy storage, all plug and play. Plug all the hardware together and let the magic happen with software. The software at that point just takes over and makes that whole experience completely seamless. And by providing that platform, that energy management platform, it also means that you continue a deep and engaging relationship with that homeowner for 20 plus years, because you can keep going back to them and going, I started you off with solar and storage. You're their trusted partner. They trust in you and they go, hey, come back and say, hey, why don't I add a fuel cell 2 years from now? Or why don't I increase the size of your solar system? So we made this system that's completely future-proof. But it really comes down to rethinking fundamentally how we deliver that, generate that energy, deliver that energy, and re-architect that entire grid from the inside out.